Even during World War II, despite the rise of air power, the vast majority of personnel and supplies were moved by sea. So it was no surprise when the British Admiralty requisitioned the Queen Mary in March 1940, with the Queen Elizabeth following in November. These two giants of the seas were destined to become the world's largest troop carriers, a vital asset for the Allies. But how do you transform ships designed for the luxurious transatlantic passenger trade, with their Art Deco refinements and lavish interiors, into effective troop carriers? I'm Chris Frame, the Maritime historian, and thanks for joining me on this look at the Queen Elizabeth and Queen Mary's wartime service. Queen Elizabeth hadn't been completed as a passenger liner yet, but the Queen Mary had, and she had seen several years of active service. Her last peacetime voyage left her berthed in New York. The first order of business was to strip everything valuable. Furniture, carpets, art, many things hinting at her luxurious origins were removed. This wasn't going to be a pleasure voyage anymore. Her hull and superstructure were painted grey, and her distinctive name was painted over in a bid to make the world's most recognisable ocean liner just that little bit less conspicuous. Queen Elizabeth had already received a similar treatment before leaving the shipyard in Clydebank. From New York, Queen Mary sailed to Sydney, arriving on the 17th of April 1940. There in the harbour, the Cockatoo Dry Docks and Engineering Company began the conversion work. Public spaces were completely repurposed. Luxury amenities took on a utilitarian nature. Space was at a premium, so even the first-class swimming pool was filled with bunks, as was virtually every other available part of the ship. While the dining rooms kept their function, the ambience and cuisine changed dramatically. The grand first-class dining room became the main mess hall, while officers used the smaller tourist-class dining room. Galleys were significantly enlarged to manage the massive food service. Even the acclaimed International Shopping Promenade was transformed into military offices, though you might be surprised to learn that the barber shop remained for the officers and troops. Most of Queen Mary's staterooms didn't have private bathrooms. Rather, you would go down the hall to use shared bathroom facilities. This made the conversion slightly easier. These shared facilities were expanded to accommodate the increased capacity. Queen Elizabeth went through a similar conversion in Singapore. Structurally, both ships were reinforced, and the bridge windows got protective covers, while sandbags shielded vulnerable areas, and a degaussing coil was installed to reduce the risk of sea mines. Both of these ships were also fitted with anti-aircraft guns, though their primary defence was their incredible speed of over 30 knots. The entire conversion took just over 2 weeks for each ship, an astonishingly quick timeframe given the scale of work. After the conversion, both ships would carry up to 10,000 people per voyage. Queen Mary was ready first, departing Sydney on trooping duties to the Middle East, carrying Australian and New Zealand troops. Queen Elizabeth joined her months later, sailing in convoys with other requisitioned liners. When the United States entered the war, the Queens were redeployed to the North Atlantic, and they were crucial for the D-Day preparations. Their original design for regular transatlantic crossings, combined with their speed and their immense size, made them perfect for moving troops across the Atlantic. As the need for troop movement intensified, both ships were altered further, regularly transporting over 15,000 people. Incredibly, the Queen Mary still holds a record for the most people ever carried on a single ship, an astounding 16,683 in one crossing. As you can imagine, sailing on one of the Cunard Queens during wartime was a vastly different experience from the peacetime brochures. It was incredibly crowded on board, and to maintain order, the ships were divided into controlled zones. Remember, these ships were designed to carry around 3,000 people as a maximum, passengers and crew combined. They weren't even huge by today's standards, only about a third of the internal volume of the modern Icon-class cruise ships. Yet they carried more than twice the number of people as an Icon-class ship carries today. You might not be aware that the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth retained their Cunard White Star captains and officers, as well as some of the crew. Their experience became far more dangerous than the usual peacetime crossings. Too fast for Atlantic convoys and often outrunning their escorts, both queens sailed solo across the Atlantic for most of their voyages, maintaining high speeds. This was their best defence, but it meant that they were alone in treacherous waters. In fact, unbeknown at the time, the Queen Elizabeth passed directly in front of an enemy U-boat periscope, and the Queen Mary was involved in a tragic collision with the HMS Curaçao. Both of these dramatic stories are best saved for another video, but let me know in the comments if you're interested in more details about the Queen's wartime service. While not the only ocean liners used for trooping, the sheer size, passenger capacity, and incredible speed of Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth had a monumental impact on the Allied war effort. Their troop-carrying capacity was, and still is, unmatched. Never before had two ships transported so many people in such a relatively short period. The unique combination of size, speed, and professionalism of the Cunard White Star crew allowed the Allies to move entire divisions in a single crossing, something unprecedented in any past conflict. And at the height of their wartime service, the Queens transported over 30,000 US and Canadian troops per month, and were responsible for moving over half of the Allied divisions involved in the D-Day landings. It was this incredible impact, this crucial advantage that it gave the Allies, that led Winston Churchill to famously acknowledge the Cunard Queens for helping shorten the war. In a letter to Cunard's chairman, Sir Percy Bates, he stated, "Without their aid, the day of final victory must unquestionably have been postponed." By the end of their wartime service, the two ships had moved over 1.5 million people. But their service wasn't over. After the war, the Queen served as repatriation vessels, joining other Cunard White Star liners such as the veteran Aquitania, the 3rd Britannic, and the 2nd Mauretania, transporting troops and war brides across the Atlantic. In 1947, the two Queens finally entered their intended service as passenger liners on the iconic two-ship weekly transatlantic run. They became famous on both sides of the Atlantic, and indeed across the world. In many ways, they were as famous as the celebrity passengers who sailed on them during the golden age of travel. This video was brought to you by me and my new book, The Evolution of the Passenger Ship. In The Evolution of the Passenger Ship, we bring years of research together to create a book that takes you on a journey from the dawn of passenger shipping right the way through to the modern cruise behemoths that we see today. And if you purchase a copy, you support us, which helps us keep the channel going. Thanks so much, and now back to the video. The two Queens maintained their weekly transatlantic service until the mid-1960s, securing their place in history as two of the finest ships to ever transit the North Atlantic. Fortunately, with the end of World War II, we have never since needed ships to carry such numbers in a wartime scenario. The Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth will hopefully remain forever the largest troop transports the world has ever known. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you found this video interesting. In my opinion, these are among the two of the most spectacular ships ever built. If you'd like to hear more about the Cunard Queens, you can check out my Substack, and let me know in the comments below if you'd like to know more about Cunard's famous Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth on this channel. As always, a huge thank you to our channel members whose support helps make these videos possible. If you'd like to join the crew and see your name at the end of the video like these people, please consider becoming a member. If you're interested in the backstory of the Cunard Queens, don't forget to check out some of the other videos I have on my channel. I've linked them in the description below. Thanks once again for watching, and until next time, I hope to see you on board.